Okay, since most people seem far more interested in money videos than in spirituality or health videos, here's another money video. Most people save money thinking that they're going to retire on it someday. I'd point out first of all that the quality of your retirement will probably depend more on your health than on a little extra money. However, we've all been conditioned to believe that we need lots of money saved for when we retire. There's something that the government and the media aren't telling you, though. We're all being told that inflation for the last few years is running at 2 or 3% a year. Now, this is basically just an outrageous lie. I mean, can you think of anything other than electronics which hasn't gone up a lot more than 2 or 3% a year? There are a lot of articles online that explain how the government lies about inflation. Basically, they say that there are hedonistic adjustments, and so that even though the price of housing has doubled in the last 4 or 5 years, in reality, they claim that the price of housing has only gone up, 1 or 2% because we have better quality housing now, which is a lie because even the older houses have gone up in value, have doubled in value. And people, I think, in the back of their minds recognize that we're being lied to, that inflation is more than 2 or 3% a year. I mean, the euro is inflating at 4% a year. The dollar is devaluing against the euro at 10% a year, therefore you would think inflation would be 14% a year. I mean, it's just pretty simple. It's just insulting almost that the government can lie to us so blatantly. You really have to ask yourself, when the government is lying this blatantly to you, first, what's the truth? And secondly, why are they lying in such an outrageous manner? Well, to find true inflation, there are a number of ways. You can basically just look at the price of oil, because everything in our society is ultimately dependent on oil, and the price of oil kind of drags along everything else at some point. So if oil is going up at 20 or 30% a year, ultimately inflation will go up at 20 or 30% a year if oil continues to go up. Another way you can do it is looking at M3, which is the total amount of money out there. So if the government is allowing 10% more money to be created each year, then that's kind of a good estimate that inflation will probably run around 10%. And it could be a lot more if our economy is going down, or it could be less if our economy is doing well. But looking at M3 is a good way to judge inflation. Unfortunately, the government stopped printing M3 statistics a couple years ago. It wasn't really reported anywhere except online. But again, just an outrageous attempt to cover up the truth, to just stop printing one of the most important economic statistics like that. It's not enough, though, to just understand in the back of your mind, oh yeah, inflation's higher and the government's not telling us the truth. Outrageous lies like this generally tend to have enormous implications which we're usually not aware of. So ask yourself, why would the government lie so much about inflation? Well, one thing is that in general in our society recently we tend to take a much shorter term view, and industry tends to have a lot more control over our government than it did in the past. And inflation benefits the banking industry and corporate America to a degree, and so there's a temptation in government now just to let inflation get higher and higher. Even though it's to the detriment of the general society, it benefits these special interests, and it's just part of a kind of a slow decline of our overall society. But there's another bigger and, in my opinion, the main reason that we're allowing inflation to get out of control. You see, the baby boomers are going to be retiring, and there's really no way that our society can support the retirement of that many people on the pensions that they've been promised. And so people have been saving their entire lives expecting that they're going to have a well-funded retirement, and in my opinion it's just not going to happen. Because in order to pay for this type of retirement, we would have to make an enormous sacrifice as a nation to fund the complete retirement of the baby boomers. It would bankrupt a lot of large corporations who have promised big pensions, and it would bankrupt Social Security. And the easy way out, in fact the only way out, is probably to inflate the money supply to a large degree until the baby boomers' pensions are inflated down to a fraction of what they really would be in real dollar terms. And in my opinion, that's what the government's going to do. It's certainly what they've started to do for the last 4 or 5 years. And this will probably continue on because it's the only way that our economy can kind of muddle through this big issue of the baby boomers' retirements. And so people go their entire lives saving money and not really recognizing that if you don't take some kind of an active role in protecting your savings from inflation, then you've spent a lot of time and a lot of worry saving in an improper manner. I want to end on a positive note, though, because first of all, if you're one of the tiny fraction of people who recognizes what's occurring and is going to occur, then it's relatively easy to protect your savings from inflation. But much more importantly, I'd like to point out that what we believe about the huge amounts of money that are necessary to retire, that's just conditioning as well. I mean, if you look at older people around the world and in America, you'll see that the amount of money they have really has almost no bearing on their happiness. Things like health and connectivity to community are vastly more important to a happy old age than having, a few $1,000s a month. We're simply conditioned to believe that we need that money to retire. Now, the reason the average American is conditioned to save money is that there are many different entities that benefit off of the savings of the average American, and it's too lengthy a subject to cover here. But I'd like to just point out that although we spend years of our lives saving for retirement, most Americans spend very little time actually talking to retired people and trying to find out what issues are really important for a happy retirement.